Welcome, Frankfort and Franklin County residents, and thank you for tuning in to the candidate forum for state representative for the 57th House District general election held on November 5th, 2024. I'm J.C. Young, and I'm honored to serve on the Chamber Government Affairs Committee and your moderator for this event. The first meeting of the Kentucky General Assembly occurred in 1792, shortly after Kentucky was granted statehood. For 230 years, Frankfort has stood as the Commonwealth capital and has been the meeting place of our state legislature. The State House is made up of 100 elected representatives, while the State Senate consists of 38 elected senators with larger population districts. After redistricting last year by the legislature in the 57th House District is now composed of western and central parts of Franklin County. The obligations of state representative include policy research, drafting bills, reading and considering legal opinions, legislative committee work, taking concerns from constituents, evaluating state programs, and assessing how legislation will affect their district and the state budget. The office that you're both seeking has a storied history in our state's capital, and it's worthy of candidates such as yourselves. In this candidate forum, we're honored to have for State Representative 57th District, Mr. Kyle Thompson and Miss Erika Hancock. Before we begin, I'd like to thank and recognize the Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce for establishing this candidate forum and the Frankfort Plant Board for hosting and broadcasting this event. Serving as our esteemed panelists today, and those doing the real work at this function are Frankfort Area Chamber of Commerce and President, CEO, Miss Tish Shade. Owner-operator of Canoe Kentucky and Kentucky River Tours, Mr. Nathan Deppenbrock, and Chair of the Chamber Government Affairs Committee and Frankfort Plant Board Communications Director, Ms. Kathy Lindsay. Candidates, you're going to have 2 minutes for opening remarks and 2 minutes for closing remarks, and 1 minute follow-ups, 1 minute responses to questions with 30-second follow-ups. We had a draw right before the forum, and our remarks are going to begin with Ms. Hancock. Ms. Hancock, your opening statement, you're going to have 2 minutes.
Thank you, J.C. My name is Erika Hancock, and I am the Democratic representative for the 57th House District seat. This is the same seat that my friend Derek Graham has capably held for the last 20 years, and I am committed to delivering that same service-based leadership that he provided. Some of you also may remember Uncle Hank Hancock. Uncle Hank held the same seat from the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s and was Speaker Pro Tem. And I know between Derek and Uncle Hank that I would have some really big shoes to fill. I was born in northern Kentucky, and growing up, life was not always easy. Like a lot of kids, my parents divorced, and like far too many families, we lost my grandparents to gun violence when I was just 7. Thanks to friends and family's encouragement and faith that said if I work hard and believe in myself, I could overcome any obstacle and accomplish anything. Thanks to many late nights of studying and minimum wage jobs, I got to attend college and became the first person in my family to graduate. Frankfort has been good to me, and I feel obligated to give back. I have served on a number of community boards, such as Site-Based Decision-Making Council, United Way, Sunshine Center, and the Finance Committee at First United Methodist Church. I believe now is the perfect time for me to transition from my supportive role in the community to a leadership one. And when Derek announced his retirement, I knew that this was the best way for me to serve.
Thank you for that. Mr. Thompson, 2 minutes, opening remarks.
Thank you, J.C. Thank you to the Chamber. Thank you to Cable 10 for hosting us today. Greatly appreciate it. It's important that folks are able to get to know the candidates, the people that they are voting for before they walk in that booth or before they fill out that ballot. My name is Kyle Thompson. I have served for the last 4 years as a city commissioner for the city of Frankfort. I have tackled tough issues already. Prior to that, I have been practicing law for the last 23 years here in Frankfort. I was born and raised in Frankfort. Frankfort's my hometown. Frankfort is struggling, though, and that's the reason that I decided to put myself out there as a candidate for First City Commission. And now, after seeing the effects of legislation and, quite frankly, poor legislation when it comes to the city of Frankfort, it became very important to me that I step up and actually provide an alternative for folks here in Frankfort so that we can tackle big issues, infrastructure issues, drug problems, crime, and development of our economic policies here in Central Kentucky, things that haven't been tackled for many, many decades here in the capital city. I'm prepared and I'm willing to assist in getting those things done so that Frankfort is a place that we all can be proud to call home. And thank you again for having me. I'm looking forward to answering all these questions.
Thank you both for your opening statements. Our first question comes from Ms. Shade, and that's going to be directed to you, Mr. Hancock, or Ms. Hancock, excuse me. You'll have 1 minute for your response.
Okay, what specific legislation would you propose to support small businesses to boost economic development in the 57th district?
The one that I think that would be that I take as a priority of mine is affordable childcare for our working families. I mean, I think we all struggle with it's being in a small business. Carrie in my office, I mean, her daughter was lucky enough to come every single day because of shortfalls in financing for childcare. There's families that pay over $1,600 a month for 2 kids in childcare. It's hard to make that choice to go back to work and be in the workforce, and we need these people in our workforce and back to work. But we can't do that expecting them to pay over $1,600 a month for childcare. So that is very important to me. That would directly affect the economic impact of our district.
Mr. Thompson, 1 minute.
Thank you for the question, Tish. First and foremost, our downtown area is what is the heartbeat of our small business growth and small business development. And it has to grow. There has to be money poured into that. And the state has over $1 billion in real property across the Franklin County area that they don't pay taxes on. That hurts not only our schools, but it also hurts our downtown areas because infrastructure is not cheap. And so the city of Frankfort ends up having to come up with dollars and cents to be able to make things available for small businesses. And right now we have 12 acres of prime real estate in downtown that are not being developed. They've sat empty for 4 years. And because of that, the downtown area has struggled. It's my hope that we can pour money into the city of Frankfort and be able to see an economic boom like we've never seen before.
Our next question comes from Mr. Deppenbrock, and that's going to be directed to you, Mr. Thompson. You're going to have 1 minute.
Thank you both for being here. We're in the very unique situation as a community of living in the seat of state, city, and county governments. So with that said, what role do you see the state legislator playing in supporting local economic initiatives? And how do you plan to work with city and county officials in our district to support their economic development efforts?
Well, thank you for the question, Mr. Deppenbrock. I think it is a crucial role that there has to be direct communication with not only the fiscal court, but the city commission. I've been blessed that the voters have allowed me the opportunity to actually be on the city commission for the last 4 years. And I not only know the people that will be there, but I also know the individuals behind the scenes that do the work. And I felt like I've worked very well with them. With the fiscal court, I'm very, very close with a number of individuals over there, and I feel that it's not only important for us to be a figurehead, but also get in the dirt and find out how to help those individuals, find out what the city and the county need in their development plans, whether it's through their parks program, whether it's through their downtown development plan. And those cohesive natures of those different governmental entities has never truly been there. So there needs to be an individual that is able to take it to the state, get the funding that's actually needed, and be able to make those dreams come true. And that's where I see myself being able to do that.
Thank you. Ms. Hancock, 1 minute.
Can you repeat that question, Nathan?
Sure. We are in the unique situation of living in the seat of state, city, and county governments. So what role do you see the state legislator playing in supporting local economic initiatives, and how do you plan to work with the city and county officials in our district to support their economic development efforts?
I think this comes down to relationships. It comes down to trusting your local government and not constantly looking for things that are going wrong, but focus on the things that are going right and moving forward and capitalizing on all the things that we have that are going great in our town right now. I think that comes down just to basic civility and treating each other with respect and listening, not talking at one another, but listening and talking to one another. Not looking for got you moments, but looking for attaboy moments and encouraging and making sure that we are all on the same page and that everybody's voice is heard and carried to the state capitol.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Kathy Lindsay, and that's going to start with you, Ms. Hancock. You're going to have 1 minute.
I'd just like to ask, what differentiates you from your opponent?
You know, I don't think that you can get two more opposite people that are sitting up here at this point. I have a tendency to lead with positivity, with empathy, compassion. I tend to see the good that's happening and not focus on what's not happening and what has happened in the past. Look, we're here. We can place blame, we can point fingers, but ultimately, the only way we move forward together is by encouraging and lifting each other up, and that's what I will bring to the state legislature and as a representative of the 57th District.
Mr. Thompson? 1 minute.
Thanks for the question. I actually see it a little differently. I think we're actually very much alike in the sense of the type of people we are. I have great respect for Ms. Hancock and her husband, Jeff. I've known Jeff almost my whole life, and I've known Erika for 20 years. Our kids swam together. I have such great respect for them. When it comes down to what we are dealing with in the city of Frankfort, I've had the experience, and that's the difference here, is I've had the experience of being downtown, of working on the city commission, of drafting legislation, of making sure that bills passed in the past, and that is something that is important. At the same time, our community is hurting in the sense that we have bridges falling into the river. Our infrastructure is crumbling underneath our feet. Attaboy moments are great, but right now, we need somebody that's willing to get dirty and get the work done, and I'm willing to do that.
Our next question comes from Ms. Shade, and that's going to be directed to you, Mr. Thompson. You're going to have 1 minute.
Sure.
What is your position on using state tax incentives to attract businesses, and how would you ensure that these are beneficial to our district?
Well, I think the one thing that has been talked about many times are TIF dollars and things of that nature. And unfortunately, most folks don't know how TIF procedures actually work. And I've been on the other end of that when people have thought they've known what's happening, and yet TIFs have never come to fruition. Parcels B and C are a very good example. There needs to be a coordinated plan, like I talked before, when it comes to city, county, and state government and how those funds are going to funnel in before legislation is even created to be able to funnel those monies in and before TIF applications are even put in. You need to have everything set up, ready to go, so that it is a streamlined and easy process. It's happened in Ashland, it's happened in Owensboro, it's happened in Paducah. Why can't it happen here? Well, I think it's because we simply haven't had the communication between those three different groups. I'm willing to coordinate that, and I think my experience will help me do that.
Ms. Hancock?
Well, the reality is Kyle and I have the same exact experience when it comes to the state legislature, which is none. And I have talked to people up at the state capitol that have told me that sitting on a five-person city commission does not equate to what goes on in the state legislature. But as far as the money, state incentives to come into our town, it just gets the basic bringing all the stakeholders to the table, not my ideas, not your ideas, all of our ideas together, and making sure that we have everybody's input before we start asking for the money and actually go to the Capitol and ask for it once we all have the stakeholders involved.
Next question comes from Mr. Deppenbrock, and that's going to be directed to you, Ms. Hancock.
Tourism is a very important and significant draw to our community. So what state-level initiatives would you support to boost tourism in our district and the surrounding areas? And this should include further development and support of Kentucky's bourbon industry.
You know, I think that this happened with the bourbon barrel tax, that it did hurt our community, but it does help the broader picture. And I know that tough decisions like that are going to be made. I mean, we own an Airbnb in town. We see the tourism boom that is happening right now. We just need to capitalize it, make sure that our state legislator knows that we're on board and we're ready to move forward to take it to the next level.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the question. I think this is very important for our community. First and foremost, you have to define what different areas of tourism you're looking at. The first one, obviously, is the bourbon industry. It's great that we already have not only a foothold, we have the largest bourbon maker in at least exporter in the entire United States. So I think that's greatly something that is being underutilized at this point. The second thing, though, is we also need a conference and convention center. How can you have any tourism and bring people in if you don't have a conference and convention center? The state has to put dollars into that. The city and the county have to put dollars into that. And the third area is you have to have sports tourism. It's the largest tourism area in the state of Kentucky and in most of the Southeast is sports tourism for small communities. I think it's very important that we utilize that in our county and city governments, as well as the money funneling in to those areas. And that includes making sure that places like Capitol View Park, which the city of Frankfort has poured millions of dollars into, is actually given to the city of Frankfort so that they can take advantage of those different operations.
Our next question comes from Kathy Lindsay, and it will be directed to you, Mr. Thompson. You're going to have 1 minute.
Great, thank you.
Okay, this is maybe a two-part question.
Okay.
How do you believe Kentucky's abortion restrictions might affect the state's economy and workforce? And what policies would you propose to address potential economic impacts?
Thank you for that question. It's confounding to me when folks equate the life of a child to economic development. It also confounds me when businesses make decisions based upon that, although they will. When the Supreme Court handed down the latest court matters related to Roe v. Wade, they essentially took that and sent it back to the states. So it's the state's determination on what they're going to do. The state of Kentucky has determined through their legislation, some that has been struck down and some that is still being used, that they will have stricter restrictions than some other states, say California. And because of that, that's the will of the people, and I think that's important. They elected their elected officials, and they made sure that they pushed whatever ideas and agendas that the majority of the folks wanted. But I think it's important that we also consider the fact that it's the birth of a child, and I will never not seek to protect the life of a child.
Ms. Hancock, 1 minute.
The economic impact of our abortion restrictions are detrimental to our medical industry. I mean, these people are afraid to make life decisions, life-saving decisions to our women when there is a total abortion ban. I will 100% support the Hadley's Law that is going to be proposed next year to have certain exceptions, incest, rape, and the life of the mother. You know, I've had friends that have had to make these difficult decisions. To me, this is not a decision that should be made at our state capitol, and we need exceptions so that we can recruit good medical doctors. I mean, they're leaving states where these bans, where they're having to make those life and death decisions, and there are women dying. We need to protect that and make sure that economically we can support our medical community.
Good. Our next question is going to come back to the beginning. We're going to start with Ms. Shade, and we are going to direct that to you, Ms. Hancock. You're going to have 1 minute.
What infrastructure projects do you believe are crucial for economic development in our district, and how would you secure funding for them?
Well, I think Governor Beshear's already sent money for the convention center that was in the future, and then parcels B and C are looking at development after the transit center was built to secure some shops and things downtown. I mean, definitely we need to take care of our bridges and roads right now. I mean, they are clearly falling in the water. But just like as an insurance agent that I have to deal with when we have total catastrophic storms, we have to prioritize the severity, and that's what I think we're seeing in our bridges right now. But I definitely think we do need some indoor sports facilities, and I know an indoor pool is in the talks. I mean, all of these things are going to work together. We just need to be a little bit patient and have faith in our leaders that they're doing what is right for our community.
Thank you very much for the question, Tish. Going back to what I said earlier, I think that it's important that we focus on the issues that are ripe right now. We don't have a convention and meeting center. We are the state capitol. There is nothing more detrimental to a state capitol than not having a meeting and convention center. It also hurts our financial bottom line, as you well know, at the Chamber of Commerce, because there are certain taxes that you can apply for and assess and those that you can't. So we have to do that. The second thing is we have to have an indoor sports and athletic facility, not just because we want to bring people in, but because that's what's going to make a healthy community for us. And I'm not talking something that is going to be like the old YMCA. I'm talking about something that is transformational for this entire community. To secure that money, we simply say, state, you have to do this. Now, we'll give all of the free and discounted rates for any of the state employees and things of that nature, but we have to have that to have a safe and healthy community. And to do that, I'll make sure that the money is there for the city of Frankfort.
We're going to Mr. Deppenbrock, and this question is going to start with you, Mr. Thompson. We're going to have 1 minute.
Sure.
How do you plan to work across party lines to address issues that are unique to Central Kentucky, particularly in areas where state-level decisions heavily impact the local economy and infrastructure?
Thank you for the question again. I think it's important to understand that all state decisions will affect all local economies in some way or another. Here in Frankfort, every state decision has a very big impact. It's almost like having a third part of your local government here. So it's very important to do that. I think it's also important to understand that I don't just have no experience working in the state legislature. Have I ever been a legislator? No, but I was a general counsel for a state agency for 3.5 years and completely rewrote an entire section of the Kentucky Revised Statutes and an entire section of the administrative regulations. I know how to draft regulation and statutes, and I know how to get those passed because I've worked through the process. So I'm able to do that. I'm able to work across party lines. I've done so already. I've done so with folks on the city commission and gotten very important things done, including our new target area and development on the west side of town that is going to be, again, transformational for this area. But I have the experience to work with those people. I know them already, and I'm able to do so.
Ms. Hancock, 1 minute.
It comes down to civility. It's treating people with respect, not demanding that things happen to this community, but working together for everybody at this table together. I mean, one of the things I'm running on is bringing some much-needed civility back to the General Assembly. I mean, we see it on TV, we hear it, all the division and the political divisiveness on both sides needs to stop. We need people that can talk to each other and come to common grounds to move forward together, not worry about why we got here, who to blame, what fingers to point. And I'm good at that. I do that in my insurance agency every day. I have CEOs, I have people in their, fixed income housing, and I treat everybody the same. I mean, when they walk in the door, they know that they are treated the exact same way, and I treat them with civility and respect. And that's how you work across party lines. You need to have good party lines and good discussions to move the Kentucky forward.
Our next question comes from Ms. Kathy Lindsay, and we're going to start with you, Ms. Hancock, for 1 minute.
All right. This year on the ballot, we have 2 constitutional amendments. Constitutional Amendment 2 would add a new section to the Constitution allowing the General Assembly to pass laws that financially support non-public schools. What is your position on Constitutional Amendment 2 and why? And what economic impacts, if any, do you foresee from this amendment in our district?
I absolutely am going to vote no on Amendment 2. Public schools need more funding, not less funding. I was on the site-based decision-making council at Bonnert Middle School, and when student allocation money came in and we had to make those tough decisions of cutting programs like band and chorus and things like that, the reality is the people that benefit from this voucher system are the people that have already making those choices. School choice is a thing already, and these people benefit from it, and it will take money out of our schools. It will be detrimental to our small school system, Frankfort High, which my kids go to, because they are already struggling to give their teachers raises. You can't underfund and starve a system, say it's not working, and send the money elsewhere. And I believe that that's what this voucher system is happening. I am committed to standing up for our public schools.
Mr. Thompson?
I'm a public school graduate. All of my kids have gone to public school here in Franklin County. I am a huge proponent of public schools, but our public schools are failing across this state. Our public schools are 46th in the nation in almost every category. I'm not pointing blame, I'm stating facts. And the reality is that let's pour more money into it isn't working. 5th grade in Franklin County, they don't teach science. They don't teach science to 5th graders because it's not on the test. That is pitiful when we're not even clearing the test, the state-mandated test, by more than 50%. So that's not working either. So then you have students who go 2 years without having science when they're going into middle school, probably one of the hardest transitions already. So that's not working. I am all for trying something that's working in other jurisdictions like Florida and Texas and places of that nature. And it doesn't affect the rich in these communities that are able to already afford those schools. It affects the poor and those who don't have the ability to go to schools. They have to go to the schools where they live.
We're going to have to ask the candidates to pay attention to the timekeeper, please. This thing's on a clock, and I'm getting messages that we have to move on. The next question starts with Ms. Tish Shade. It's going to be directed to you, Mr. Thompson. You're going to have 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
If you were to win this election, what's your first order of business?
My first order of business is to secure funding for a cost of living adjustment for our retirees of state government and teachers in this community. They haven't had one in 13 years. That the inflation since 2011 has increased by 30%, and the average state worker makes $31,800. That's not enough to live on with the inflation going up as high as it is. The first thing I'm going to do is to make that right. They didn't cause the problems with our state retirement system. That was the legislators' fault. So we need to fix it, and we need to not put it on the backs of those people that gave their whole lives and profession to the state of Kentucky, and we need to fix that to make it right.
Ms. Hancock, 1 minute.
Can you repeat that question?
If you were to win this election, what would be your first order of business?
You know, our state, we have a lot of state retirees, like Kyle said, that have not received a cost of living raise in over a decade. I am committed to working at least with the 13th paycheck that wasn't passed last session that I feel needs to be brought to the table. I've already started to build a network of people, of experts in the field, to try to come up with different ways to get that passed, to at least alleviate some reprieve for our state retirees that have dedicated their professional lives to bettering the Commonwealth. They deserve to be taken care of, and it is a direct economic impact. And two, a lot of people can realize how people talk about state workers. I mean, state workers have been a political punching bag for far too long. These people needed to be treated with civility and have their labor respected, and those are two things that I will definitely take care of day one.
Thank you.
All right. Our next question is going to come from Mr. Deppenbrock. Mr. Deppenbrock, this is going to be directed to Ms. Hancock. You're going to have 1 minute.
What changes to state tax policy or regulations would you advocate for to make Kentucky more attractive to businesses?
You know, there are some incentives for small business that I know they're talking about on a federal level that I definitely would support. I mean, small businesses are the backbone of our communities. I've been a small business owner for 23 years, and making sure that our small town, which has great, I mean, we've all seen the stores pop up, and then we've seen some that have had to pull out. We need to make sure that we're supporting our small businesses through tax incentives to get them here in our town to make sure that we can keep that momentum going. So any tax incentives for small businesses is definitely something I would support.
Mr. Thompson, you want to repeat it? You good?
No, I'm good.
1 minute.
Thank you. The first thing I would do, Mr. Deppenbrock, is I would support the efforts to get rid of the Kentucky income tax immediately. I think move to a consumption tax that those who make more money, they buy more stuff, it affects them more. And that's exactly what I would do. That would make Kentucky not only attractive to small businesses, but large businesses. And that's what transforms communities and transforms states, bringing in those large companies. Just look at Georgetown, for example. So I would push for that. I'd also push for a rollback of all estate taxes and inheritance taxes with the state. There's absolutely no reason that once you've been taxed twice on your earnings, that when you pass away, that your heirs have to pay an inheritance tax on that as well. I'd get rid of that as well. That would actually bring in more people than you would imagine. So those two things I think would be game-changing for the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and look at Tennessee and you can see it's already working.
It's our final question, and then we're going to go to closing comments. The last question comes from the incomparable Kathy Lindsay.
Well, really, I just had a follow-up from my previous question.
Well, it's still going to be a 1 minute. So you got a 1 minute follow-up. This is going to be directed to Mr. Thompson.
Sure.
All right?
Yes.
And it's a 1 minute remark.
Again, we're talking about Amendment 2.
Sure.
You made the comment that it doesn't affect the rich people, but that it would affect the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
Do you not see that it would, are there any circumstances that you would see it would negatively affect the poor people who may not have the opportunity to make that school choice?
Well, if it's a school choice that deals with either a voucher program or that the money follows the student, you're only adding more options to individuals. You're not taking options away. Right now, they have no choice. It's either you're going to go to this school because that's where your bus will pick you up, or that they only have transportation to this one area. Whereas if your school is producing better academic, athletic, or whichever area of life you want to focus on, then you'll have the opportunity to do that. By adding a choice to that, I don't see that you're taking that away. And in fact, what we've seen across the nation is when school choice is actually allowed, that it actually benefits those who are at a lower socioeconomic status to begin with, because those students can go to better schools, and you don't have failing schools at that point, because each school is going to try to do better so that the students don't leave. And I think everybody benefits at that point.
What would your answer be to public school teachers who have the question of they don't have enough funds to do what they, with what they need to do now, and if this affects their funds negatively
30 seconds.
in public schools? Sorry.
Two things. Franklin County Public Schools has over $110 million a year to provide education to the students. It is one of the higher end of per capita per student. And so pouring more money into that isn't going to make it better. Having better educational standards is going to make things better. And when it comes to the city of Frankfort, if the state will start paying what they actually owe in lieu of taxes, places like Frankfort High are going to benefit tremendously. And I believe school choice will actually be a good thing.
Let me give Ms. Hancock
Please do.
1 minute to respond
Yeah.
to. Do you want to repeat the first part of the question?
Yes. It was just school choice.
Just talking about the negative impacts it would have on our public school system.
Well, I'm not sure where my opponent is getting his information, but there have been stories of rural areas in this country where school systems have shut down because of the voucher system. The reality is the people that benefit from this are the people that are already in the private schools. I have 2 children that have a learning disability. We are delusional to think that these for-profit charter schools are going to take kids that don't test well. I mean, especially when they're so competitive against each other on testing and test scores. We need to protect our public school system. And again, you can't starve an underfunded system, say it's not working, and take the money elsewhere.
We have now reached time to ask for closing remarks. We're going to flip the order from the 1-2. We're going to start with you, Mr. Thompson. So you're going to have 2 minutes closing remarks. This camera here, we got a timekeeper.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you, JC. Thank you, Chamber. Thank you to all of the panelists here. Thank you to Cable 10 for having us today. The choice in this election for the 57th District is one based upon whether you want someone who has experience or whether you want someone who talks about that they're going to be able to work with folks in the legislature. I have the experience of working with legislators. I have experience working in local governments. I know the inner workings of the city of Frankfort government, and I know the folks and how those things work. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where the city of Frankfort doesn't have the opportunity to sit back and say, we should just wait and see what happens. Almost 15 years ago, Swim Play Frankfort attempted to get us a pool, knowing that we would need an indoor facility a decade and a half ago. And we sat back and waited, and we have 0 pools now. And that's because if you're waiting for something to happen and you're not willing to go and make it happen, it's never gonna happen. So you have to make your own opportunities in this world. My experience sets me apart from my opponent. And while I respect her greatly and I think she's a great businesswoman, my experience is what the city of Frankfort needs right now. And right now, I'm asking for your vote in November to become your next House of Representative for the 57th District. Thank you.
Ms. Hancock, 2 minutes closing remarks.
Thank you all very much for taking time out of your day. It's not news to anyone in this room and watching at home that our state and our nation are at a crossroads. For the past several decades, politics have just become meaner, and far too often, anger and cruelty are what passes as leadership. Our leaders often talk at one another instead of listening and talking to one another. And nothing's going to change if no one's willing to challenge that status quo. I am going to challenge that status quo. I'm going to add some much-needed civility back to the General Assembly. And being civil doesn't mean being soft or weak. In fact, remaining civil in the face of anger and ignorance requires far more strength and courage. I have always stood up for what I believe in, and that will not change in the General Assembly. And look, being the state capitol, we can get a little cynical about politicians and big promises, so I'm not going to sit here and make a lot of big promises. But I will give you this commitment. I will be there for you. Whether you need something, you have a question, you just want to come and complain, come see me, call me, text me. I will listen, and I will do everything in my power to help. And I know if we work together, great things are possible for Frankfort and all of Kentucky. My name is Erika Hancock, and I would be honored to have your vote. Thank you.
As we close, I'd like to personally thank both of you for seeking this office. You've put your name on the ballot, spent your own time and money, skipped out on your own family events, and only to serve your community. And I want you both to know that it's greatly appreciated. You've both done a great job in this forum, and I wish you the best in the election. There have been some election law changes statewide in the last several years, and now there are multiple ways to cast your ballot in this election, a few of which include mail-in absentee ballots, in-person early voting before Election Day, which is October 31st, Thursday, Friday, November 1st, and Saturday, November 2nd. There are 3 locations in Franklin County, and you can vote at any of those voting centers. In-person on Election Day voting, November 5th, 2024. There are 12 polling locations in Franklin County, and you can show up at any place and vote. As you know, 2024 is a presidential election year. Statewide, this ballot includes all six congressional seats, the entire State House of Representatives, half the Kentucky State Senate, many local and jurisdictional elected positions, and voters across the Commonwealth will be deciding on 2 constitutional amendments. To say the least, it's an important election. If you don't know where or how to vote, please call the Franklin County Clerk's office at 502-875-8702 or check out their website. It's loaded with current election information. It's been an honor to serve as the moderator and MC for this event, and I would like to thank all the folks that aren't on camera for all of their work to make this possible. This concludes our forum. Thank you for joining us.